Welcome to Main Street, USA. But no, I'm not in a Disney park. This is Marceline, Missouri, where Walt Disney grew up, with special permission from Disney and by work from Disney's family and the city of Marceline. This is the only non-Disney theme park, Main Street, USA, in the world. Because of Walt Disney's importance and many people have come to appreciate what he's done, there's a lot of remnants and nods to Walt Disney and his childhood here in Marceline. Let's check them out.
Soarin to tower. We are ready for takeoff.
This Main Street USA street sign has a familiar silhouette about it. It's Mickey Mouse. That's a Mickey. And this clock probably looks familiar to people that have been to Disneyland, since it's the exact same style of clock. This place used to be an opera house where a young Walt Disney saw a production of Peter Pan that inspired him to fall in love with the story and eventually, make it into the Disney animated film we all know and love today. This is the Uptown Theater. This is where Walt and Roy held the regional premiere of The Great Locomotive Chase, and it's also where they held the world premiere of the Spirit of Mickey film. And just beyond the ticket taker Goofy, you can see that they're planning on renovating this Uptown Theater, which has been called since the 1950s to be the Walt Disney Hometown Theater. Obviously, the city is just a city, but there's also a deep love, whether it's from the actual citizens or from the local government mandating it, of Walt Disney and his accomplishments, and the fact that he came from here. It's not hard to walk down the street and see the inspiration for Main Street, USA. This cafe here was frequented by a lot of Marcelinians, as the locals say, when Walt Disney was growing up here, and so when they were building downtown Disney, they included a Marceline confectionery in honor of this place. Walt hosted a dinner here when he was living in Marceline, and the entrance inspired the facade of the Coke Corner, later the Refreshment Corner, and then later Casey's Corner in Disneyland. In the center of town is Ripley Park. If that name sounds familiar, it's probably because of the E.P. Ripley in Disneyland, named after Ripley Park. I think Walt might have enjoyed living here, with all the things he named after and modeled after this city. You may have seen Midget Autopia in the distance. That was an original ride from Disneyland that operated until they replaced it, and when they replaced it, they sent the original here to Marceline. You could actually ride it for a little bit until it broke down because it was old, and I think they sent one of the cars to a museum, and they replaced the track with a walking path of the same shape, designed by Walt Disney Imagineering. It's like I'm really there. This is a much more windy path than Autopia is today. And this train here at the outskirts of E.P. Ripley Park is not from Disneyland, but they painted it to be an homage both to the Santa Fe Railroad and the Disneyland Railroad right before Walt and Roy visited Marceline in 1956. I think they like Walt Disney a bit. And this really is a beautiful city, even Walt Disney stuff notwithstanding. It's a beautiful small town that is, not bustling at all. It's very quaint. And also happens to be the birthplace of one of the greatest creative minds in the world. I bought a Walt Disney postcard that I'm going to send to myself because the Marceline post office is going to use a Disney-themed stamp when they send it. And this random gas station here at the intersection used to be Park School, which is where young Walt Disney went to elementary school and carved his name into that desk that we saw earlier. It's crazy to think how much it's changed, but this is where he grew up. There's always something strange when I visit these historical cities and I see what's left of the time in which things happened that made it historical. But then, the city's grown up around it, so there are some things that are perfectly preserved, and there are artifacts, and there are buildings that look exactly the way they did. The Main Street of Marceline, if you compare a picture, looks pretty much identical, but then they replace the school with a gas station, and just stuff like that happens. But there's a weird dichotomy when you visit cities like this that have continued to grow, while also trying to remain historical. And while I'm here, I'm staying at the Chairman's Suites, which is pretty much one of the only ways to stay on Main Street, USA, even if only technically. Let me show you inside. And on the inside, it's a converted office space, it looks like. but it's been turned into a living place. I'm a great wordsmith. And throughout the place, it's got art from Marceline, Disney, Looney Tunes for some reason, and it's got the Disney Resort TV, but I put that on. And yes, it's the old Resort TV, because the new one is not nearly as good. And now we're going to head to the Walt Disney Hometown Museum. The museum starts with a collection of early Marceline artifacts that show you about the time that Walt Disney grew up in. This was a school desk used by a young Walt Disney who had to etch his name in the desk how much times. I don't think this Donald Duck book was here when he was here. And at the opening ceremony for the Walt Disney Elementary School here in Marceline, Walt Disney himself gave the address. In fact, when Marceline asked if they could make a Walt Disney school, he agreed only if he could attend the opening himself. And Walt actually did come back here to Marceline to study Main Street and the town while he was researching Disneyland. That answers that question. This is an original Disneyland car. This is an official hat from the Disneyland band as of about 1997. And this is from 1955, a piece of wallpaper from his apartment in Disneyland. I've been in that apartment, and it's so cool. They've got a Walt Disney maquette and a monolithic plane. I miss the Disney store. This is actual track from the Kiowa Pacific in Walt Disney's backyard. This is a piece of the original tree that Walt Disney would sit under sometimes when he was younger, to think and imagine. Many years ago, a man named Dale wanted to recreate Disneyland out of the materials he could get. He started building it, and he had some reference images on slides. And he wrote Walt Disney asking if there was anything else. And Walt forwarded that letter to Disneyland to try to get him more references, and told him that from what he had sent him, he was doing a good job, and to keep up the good work. Tom Sawyer's Island is what Dale was working on when he died. And there's that famous entrance. So I found out from this video over here that Walt didn't just send over pictures of Disneyland. He sent the blueprints for the park to Dale so it could be built to scale. Can you imagine this now? Can you imagine Disney and Bob Iger sending you blueprints to Disneyland? That's insane. We know, buddy. We know. That was a genuinely super cool museum to be at. I've been to the Walt Disney Family Museum in San Francisco, and I expected this to be kind of like that, and it was, but it had a completely different spread of exhibits and artifacts. They're all originals. And for everything I showed you, there's way more that I didn't show you. So if you're in the area, I highly recommend coming to check out the Walt Disney Hometown Museum. I bought a lot of stuff in the gift shop afterwards, which I'm not a huge fan of, but still, very cool. There were also a few things of importance that aren't in the main area of Marceline, but are a little farther out. So I'm going to go check those out now. Just a few minutes out of town is the Walt Disney Municipal Park. This used to be a country club. There was eventually the Santa Fe Country Club for members of the Santa Fe Railroad. It eventually fell into disrepair, and then later a tornado came through and it was a whole mess. And then eventually got turned into the Walt Disney Municipal Park. This is a somewhat unique sight, at least for me. A cement cornhole in the ground. There's another one over there. I've seen, plenty of cornhole, but I've never seen any, cement as a permanent thing. I guess the citizens of Marceline really like to play cornhole. It's a fun game. And just on the other side of this lake is the park's swimming pool that was rededicated with the rededication of the park. And it's, what does that sign say? Oh, it's part of the Rotary Club. Nice. Not gonna go film the pool, because that'd be weird, but there's a pool in there. I'm pretty sure. It is raining outside, so I want to talk to you from inside of the car. But this is the Walt Disney Elementary School, which was built to replace the park school that Walt Disney went to, and was dedicated and named after him because of everything he did. And he contributed a lot to the school when they asked for his permission to use the name. Got out to tell you about this flagpole, which Walt Disney gave the school. In addition to flying the American flag, it also flew an orange Mickey Mouse flag. And it was used at the Olympics, and Walt Disney was the chairman of pageantry. And as I am outside an elementary school, and it is continuing to rain, I will get back in my car. Next is a recreation of Walt Disney's childhood barn, as built much later by his fans and all volunteers who wanted to recreate it exactly the way it was. And after the iconic dreaming tree that the young Walt Disney spent his childhood dreaming under was destroyed, fans and people that cared about Walt and his legacy built this son of dreaming tree with a sapling from the original tree, and added soil from the Magic Kingdom and water from the rivers of America to create this successor on the way to the barn. It's It's pretty tall now. In fact, the Dripping Tree produced 3 saplings. One of them is back there as the son of Dripping Tree. One of them is in Disneyland on Tom Sawyer's Island, and the other one is somewhere in secret to make sure that nothing bad happens.
Promise you won't forget me.
Oh, I won't, Christopher. All it takes is faith and trust.
This is my family. It's little and broken, but still good.
If you had it to do over again, would you do any part of it differently?
Well, if I had it to do over again, I think, no, I don't think I would. I don't know. I hope I don't have to do it over again.